Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes us sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous. You can count this week among those. Look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they're living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a Jehovah's Witness in the 1970s and 1980s. As I like to do, we're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings here. We try to have some fun, sarcasm, humor, and everything in between. It's never meant to offend anyone. Thank you for being here, whether you are a Jehovah's Witness or not. In a very busy week with very limited time, I decided it was time for Paradise lowest hanging fruit. Let's pick the lowest hanging fruit in our modern day spiritual paradise. Nothing puts me in a good mood like digging into the treasure trove of teachings that only the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses can provide. I admit it, I'm going through a bit of burnout discussing these guys right now, so I need to laugh a little bit. Hopefully you're okay with that. And there's no better place to find a good laugh like the counsel put to print from the faithful and discreet slave in these last days that never seem to end. I particularly love this stuff because it's all available in the Watchtower Library, a place most Jehovah's Witnesses should spend a great deal of their personal time, but surprisingly, they don't. They really don't. And so I present to you this week an oldie but a goodie, the Jehovah's Witness Greatest Hits Grab Bag Volume 5. And I want to emphasize for any Jehovah's Witness that might bravely be here listening, all of this was plucked from the Watchtower Library. I will cite references so that you can go and see this for yourself. I continue to be amazed at how few Jehovah's Witnesses study, but it's not anything new. It was going on back when I was among them as well. But if you're not familiar with our greatest hits shows, please access them on all major podcast platforms or on YouTube. We've got 4 other editions, all of them equally amusing. Each greatest hits episode features the wise counsel of the only group of men that possess Holy Spirit in the entire universe. All of them under the direction of Jesus Christ, who started leading these men, evidently in 1990, when he scanned the planet and he landed on a guy named Judge Joe Rutherford. He's listening in from heaven as we speak. Thanks for being here, Joe. But for those apologists who think this is all overblown and that we oversell the governing body's imperfect authority, I must now present our weekly reminder and reference from their literature. This week comes to us from the Watchtower of July 15th, 2013, on page 20, where it says, quote, "That faithful slave is the channel through which Jesus is feeding his true followers in this time of the end. It is vital that we recognize the faithful slave. Our spiritual health and our relationship with God depend on this channel." End quote. Very serious. How about one more? From Organized to Do Jehovah's Will from 2005 on page 18, where the faithful slave told us this, quote, "There are many reasons to have complete trust in the slave class. First and foremost, Jesus has appointed them over all his precious belongings. This is a clear indication that he has complete trust in them." End quote. There it is, week after week. Anything and everything out of the guys in upstate New York is a message direct to them from the throne of Jesus Christ. My weekly reminder is in the bag, and it may make life more entertaining for me, especially while scrolling social media, particularly when I see Jehovah's Witnesses, and man, there's a lot of them out there. Either that or my algorithm is polluted. There's a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses these days making excuses for the 11 men in upstate New York, even after you show them references like the two I just read. It's usually followed by the JW apologist completely disappearing from the chat. I've never had one stick around. And with all of that said, after a week with very limited time, just really no free time this week, please sit back and enjoy the latest installment of wisdom from the only organization on earth that represents the Almighty Jehovah God and His Son, King Jesus Christ. And just a reminder, if I haven't said it too many times already, they alone possess Holy Spirit. So keep all of that in mind as I now share with you my Greatest Hits Volume 5. And I'm kicking it off with Greatest Hit number 1. And it's sure to raise a few eyebrows in 2026. I thought sharing this one was appropriate since it lives on my long list of things that will likely change in the near future. I'm calling it now. This one's going to be a conscience matter any day now, but it isn't yet. We got hair, we got pants, we got clinking glasses, and the recent comments about college being a personal decision. All you can say is who to thunk it. So now enter what I think is soon to be also in the same bucket, and it's one of my favorites, which will likely expose the fact that this podcast host is from Generation X. How does Jesus and the governing body feel about the martial arts? Oh, no. Yeah. Karate, judo. There's a bunch of them. Listen, this used to be a really big deal back in the day. I can't even tell you how many conversations I sat through, the intense debates that took place in the back row of minivans while out in field service, always involving the fellas, every now and then a sister wanting to learn some self-defense. And those conversations were debating all things martial arts. This seems like a very strange subject because it is. And in fairness to all involved, the martial arts are usually considered a big no-no by just about all Judeo-Christian religions, so Jehovah's Witnesses aren't too unique that way. But it's a little weird, I know, when you focus in on it, because the same religions that really turn their nose up at the martial arts are the same ones that bless soldiers, bombs, and airplanes that drop bombs, get involved in wars and all sorts of bad stuff. But we're not here to call out the hypocrisy. Not because it isn't absurd, but because we need to have some fun with this subject at the governing body's expense. So here we go. Would it shock you to know that Jesus and his favorite guys have had a lot to say about the martial arts? I, in the past, always blamed brother Bruce Lee. For anybody who remembers him, Bruce Lee. He was a really big deal when I was a kid, and many of the brothers, including the young guys, loved all things Bruce Lee and watching his movies. And so is always the case with the history of the J-Dubs. You know Jesus will suddenly, out of nowhere, turn his attention to what is going on in pop culture and start firing up the printing presses. And that is exactly what he did back in the day with all things martial arts, especially in the 1980s. I knew several brothers that were learning karate, and they were going to judo classes and taekwondo, and they were doing it completely in secret. Not kidding. And if they got found out, it was a big controversy, right up there with going to the YMCA. And then there was just me, reading the society's literature and wondering why karate was evil, but the My Book of Bible Stories was considered good and holy? I don't know. Apparently, meditation, discipline, and a kick to the head was much worse than things like cutting babies in half, throwing women out windows, or driving tent pins through guys' heads, because that's what we were getting in the My Book of Bible Stories book. Just don't take up karate. As just one example of the governing body's directive on martial arts, I point out to you the Watchtower of July 15th, 1983, page 24, paragraph 13, where the faithful slave said this, quote, "However, for private self-defense, might not the Christian take training in the martial arts, such as the Chinese Kung Fu?" Let it be noted that this most lethal of the Oriental arts was developed more than 1400 years ago by Zen Buddhist monks of the Shaolin Monastery at the slopes of Sangshan, one of China's sacred mountains. From this religious source came also the martial arts of Japan, Bushido, meaning literally the way of the warrior. Many experts in the arts of judo, kendo, and karate still draw inspiration from religious meditation. Karate has its objective incapacitating the victim, which could result in serious injury or death. Surely, those who trust in Jehovah would not turn to the martial arts for defense. End quote. Yes, surely, violence and stuff. But is now a good time to remind everyone that the very Bible itself, the one we have today, was collected by false religions and is filled with violence? Okay, I know. Let's move on. The martial arts were off limits to J-dubs back in the day. You simply put, could not get involved with anything in the martial arts. And it includes a reference from the Secret Elders Handbook, the Pay Attention to the Flock of God book, that says that the elders could disfellowship people if they were a black belt. It didn't go into that kind of detail, you'll see. But from Pay Attention to Yourselves and All the Flock, page 141, we're told this, quote, "It is not in harmony with the spirit of 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, or Isaiah 2 through 4, for a Christian to learn karate, judo, or other martial arts. A brother would be disqualified as an elder, a ministerial servant, or a pioneer if he took up the study of such martial arts and practiced them. A person publicly advocating such could be dealt with in line with 2 Thessalonians 3, 13 through 15. As in the case of a person who takes up professional boxing and continues in such a course, he would be expelled from the congregation." End quote. Wow. Violence and stuff. It's bad. Getting stuff from other religions. It's bad. Even boxing, a subject for another day, is really bad and can get you shunned and expelled from Jehovah's Witnesses. They can't have this stuff. If you know how to defend yourself with the Eastern arts, you most certainly cannot deal with things like, I don't know, masturbation, fornication, or a teenage kid smoking cigarettes. So you can't be an elder. If you're exhibiting that kind of discipline, you can't be an elder. And if you keep pushing your taekwondo in the field service group, you too could be shunned. It's all incredible and in print. And even then, I couldn't wrap my head around any of this. For example, if you're a bad guy who practices the martial arts, even if it's for exercise or your mental health, you couldn't be a leader in the congregation? This seems strange, but walk with me here for a minute. This organization was vilifying the martial arts even as the rest of us showed up to the Kingdom Hall and sat through things like this from the Nation Shall Know That I Am Jehovah How book, page 366, paragraph 44. See if you can figure any of this out. It says, quote, "At that point, the battlefield of Armageddon is reached. The war of the great day of God the Almighty is on. As weapons of warfare, Jehovah wields the forces of creation, flooding cloudbursts of rain, hailstones of undeclared size, downpours of streaking fire and sulfur, all of which will release more destructive energy than all the atomic and nuclear energy that the nations hold in reserve in the oversupply of bombs that they have stockpiled for World War III. All their scientific devices for germ warfare and chemical warfare will be surpassed by the raging pestilence with which with which he can plague them. A pestilence that could kill off 185,000 in a single night in a given locality. The blood of Jehovah's Christian witnesses they are anxious to spill, but it will be their own blood that they will drink by the violent loss of their own lives. End quote. Sounds like a pretty neat event. Nothing like going to karate class. But how about one more from the Watchtower of June 15th, 1958, page 615, which says, quote, God's word likens Armageddon to the flood, to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and to the battle at Gibeon, where God rained down great blocks of ice upon his enemies. Armageddon will be the worst thing ever to hit this earth in the history of man. It's not karate? No. It will be marked by shocking surprise, consternation, fright, collapse of government, tremendous upheavals of earth, landslides, cloudbursts, overflowing flash floods, rain of corrosive liquid fire, and terror in the air. Oh no! On land and in the sea. No wonder that the slain of Jehovah shall be at that day from one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered nor buried. They shall be dung upon the face of the ground. End quote. Again. Sounds like a really good time. This, of course, is blessed. This, of course, is sanctioned. We are all to stand and watch this when that day shows up. But don't you dare get involved in the martial arts. I can't learn how to kick a mugger in the face when they attack my family or my wife. That's bad. And anyone that does get involved can't be an elder. And then finally, there is this. This is the same organization that holds up as examples, I don't know, men such as this guy. Maybe you remember him. His name was Lot. From the Watchtower of June 2019, page 20, we get, quote, Jehovah could have focused on Lot's imperfections. Instead, he later inspired the Apostle Peter to refer to Lot as a righteous man. How happy we are that Jehovah overlooks our mistakes. Oh no, wait a minute. Back to the quote. Can we imitate the way that Jehovah viewed Lot? I cannot. Quote, if we focus on the good qualities of our brothers and sisters, we will be more patient with them. They, in turn, will be more likely to accept the help we offer. End quote. Okay. You may be thinking, he's a little off the rails, and you're right. I'm tired, and I'm punchy. But this organization says no martial arts, no discipline, no meditation, no learning how to defend yourself should someone attack you. You can't take that karate class, but I'm contrasting that with what this organization puts out about the future and what we all have to look forward to, like, terrifying fire in the sky and people burning to death and not being buried. And if that isn't your cup of tea, how about this guy Lot? I mean, he was a pretty good guy. Don't learn how to do a high kick. Be like Lot. He offered up his virgin baby daughters to be assaulted by a horny crowd of people. And then this same guy Lot, I know everyone knows the story, proceeded to get hammered drunk and have sex with his same two daughters. And to that I say, WTF. The Bible doesn't even mention the martial arts. We're just told they're bad. But it does tell us a lot of details about Lot, and that Jehovah overlooks his bad stuff, and we should too. So again, in a week where I am completely punch drunk and tired of these men, I have to point out the absurdity of what this organization has to say about the martial arts, when it at the same time feeds us things like we should admire Lot, a guy who gave up his daughters to a horny crowd and then decided to take them for himself, if you know what I'm saying. But folks, none of what I've just said here, as bizarre as it was, is my greatest hit. Wait for it. I stumbled onto this, a nugget of counsel from the smartest men on earth that provided the much needed clarity and reasoning I needed to understand why the martial arts have always been so evil for Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'd like to take the time to share it with you here. It comes to us from the Awake of October 22nd, 1979, on page 11, where the faithful slave spoke directly to us teenage boys, I was a whopping 12 years old, and said this: the so-called martial arts, like judo and karate, are another increasingly popular method of defending oneself. These martial arts train a person to use his hands and body to either injure or kill an opponent. So in reality, they too are weapons. Their pagan background and military usage also raise questions as to their propriety for Christians. Note this, and I'd like you to close your eyes. Quote, can you imagine the Apostle John defending himself with karate chops, or Jesus Christ fighting off an opponent with kung fu tactics? End quote. Oh man, what a visual. If I were more adept at podcast production, I would have dubbed in some kung fu fighting right here. You come on, don't act like you don't know the song. They were kung fu fighting, which by the way was probably from 1979, ironically enough. Maybe that inspired Jesus to comment on this. I don't know. Oh man. Leave it up to the governing body to comment on the martial arts, something that is not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. It couldn't be, but that won't stop them from applying it to the life of a modern-day Jehovah's Witness. And they even go this far to make it fit into their messaging by getting all of us to imagine the Apostle John and Jesus kung fu fighting. Boop. You know, come on. Something that immediately took my mind to Jesus high-kicking a Pharisee in the face, you know, in his toga-like outfit. Undoubtedly, I don't know how you get around this, folks, exposing his balls to anyone watching this whole thing. I mean, what? You want us to picture Jesus using kung fu tactics? And why did they pick the Apostle John of all the apostles? He was the apostle the Bible said, or at least claims, that Jesus loved more than any other apostle. Is it kind of like a Batman and Robin thing? The two most loving guys were really martial arts guys. We want you to picture it. Remember that time the Bible told us that James and John wanted to call fire down on people? Good thing they couldn't execute a high kick to the face. And how ironic that Jesus himself had to tell them to be a little more zen in that moment. You know, sort of like what's taught to people in the martial arts. You know, calm down, guys, be disciplined. You can't make this stuff up. All of this had to make this week's greatest hits list, not mentioned in the Bible, because putting a square peg in a round hole and then encouraging Jehovah's Witnesses to picture Jesus and the Apostle John kung fu fighting and delivering karate chops to the Pharisees. I don't know, the apostate Jews, maybe even the Romans. I don't know. But tip of the hat to the governing body for conveying this message from heaven. I'm sure Jesus and John enthusiastically nodded along as the Awake of 1979 was read. But no greatest hit like this is complete without a mention of a guy that will soon be resurrected into a paradise earth. Any day now. His sins will be washed away with a fresh start, and one that includes a plant-based diet, and that is our guy. Yeah, this is fairly recent development, folks. You know him. His name is Chuck Norris. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how Chuck Norris deals with the other tough guys of the Bible, like Samson, or how about our guy King David? Just 3 guys that at that point in paradise will all be single, forever in paradise. The frustration will certainly be something to monitor. I wonder if Jehovah will remind him and all of them that he forgave Chuck Norris. What did he forgive Chuck for? Guys, I got to do it. You remember the time. It went something like this. When Jehovah said, "Let there be light," Chuck Norris said, "Say please." Got to get a Chuck Norris joke in there. There you go. I really should have contemplated not recording this week. I am punch drunk. Let's move on to greatest hit number 2. And look, what do I say? There's no introduction that's even captures the moment. I'm personally excited about this entry into the greatest hits list. If you're new here, I have someone, a man, I consider to be a virtual co-host with me weekly on this silly podcast, and I decided it was time to give him his flowers by entering just a piece of his story into the greatest hits, thereby shining a light of wisdom on the faithful and discreet slave, who only serving to prove how important it is to listen and obey these 11 men in New York. This story, this hit, will only prove that. They've been dispensing life or death wisdom to the rest of us again, all the way since 1919. And even if the governing body gets it wrong, they don't need to apologize. Ain't got no time for that. Shout out to governing body member Jeffrey Winder for letting us know that they're never embarrassed for getting it wrong in the past. Where was Jesus, by the way, in the past? Nobody knows. And no apologies are ever necessary, even if their mistakes got people killed. But let's keep it light. Let's be light. I'm punchy. Greatest hits number 2 is all about my virtual co-host. I'm sure you know him as my guy Noah. Jehovah's Witnesses have a way of making everything in their religion somehow lead back to my guy Noah. Public talks, symposiums, district conventions, dramas, videos, you name it. They all seem to somehow go back to my guy Noah. So greatest hit number 2 centers around their claim that Noah was a prophet. I know I'm keeping this kind of high bar, but not really. You thought he was just a boat builder, a zoologist, a preacher, and blessed with the kind of superhuman self-control that only he could have, considering he spent 500 years watching Mrs. Noah take her clothes off, but never, with her. He was somehow able to resist impregnating her till he was over 500. But I present to you the claim that my guy Noah isn't just a sidekick on this podcast. He's a prophet. I wonder how this will be applied. Please listen to every word, and I really highlight every word of this reference. It comes to us from the May 15th, 1955 Watchtower, page 307, paragraph 23, the series Jehovah's Channel of Communication, under the subheading, it's like it's in lights, the prophet Noah, a channel where we're told, quote, the next one recorded to have been in communication with the courts of heaven is the prophet Noah. For about 50 years, he served as God's sole channel of communication on the earth, dispensing God's word of truth. And then, after the flood, he served as Jehovah's patriarchal spokesman for about 350 years. Poor Mrs. Noah. Noah became a vigorous preacher of righteousness in accordance with his ministerial commission. The lightning judgments against the pre-flood generation of his day were also pronounced through him. Noah was a bold advocate of the one true religion. He served as an undaunted witness of Jehovah, which brought survival to his family and himself in that world crisis. Doubtless, Satan was busy sending mimic prophets to communicate lying propaganda of peace and delusions to bolster his false religious deception of that day. These religious enemies no doubt taunted Noah for his claim to have the only true religion. They may have even sneeringly charged him with channelism. End quote. Okay. As if he hasn't gotten enough play, including his own complete episode from a couple years back, one of my favorites. We're back to Noah. And first, wow. Noah is next level. Like, we all didn't know that. Only confirming why he's one of my favorites. They claim in this article that he was, quote, in communication with the courts of heaven, end quote. How so? Was he now? Did he have unlimited data on his cell phone plan? How was he doing this? And while we're at it, and I'm sorry, folks, it's a brain dump this week, we're getting into Noah and all the interesting questions you can ask about this story, but we're told he was in communication with the courts of heaven. So I got a few more questions that only he brings out in me. For example, why could demons have sex with human women, but angels never won up to them by showing up and talking to Noah in person? I don't get it. Do you? You got angels showing up, having sex with hot chicks, but Jehovah doesn't send angels to talk to Noah. Or did he? Is that how he was in communication with heaven? Were the demons more powerful than Jehovah's angels? Why could invisible spirit creatures grow penises and impregnate human females, but couldn't have just, I don't know, built the ark for Noah instead of him? Can't the angels do it? No? Okay. Why couldn't Noah's sons have kids to help him build the ark? But demons could have hot sex with female women and not just birth kids, but birth giants. Man, they sure would have come in handy building the boat. Why could other women get laid by demons, but Mrs. Noah couldn't get lucky with her husband until he was 500 years old? The questions are endless when you really just take a minute to consider my guy Noah. I'm sure there was Viagra available there, right? I know. And I assure you that Noah was definitely a real person. But I'm here to tell you in this greatest hit that Noah was also a prophet and Jehovah's sole channel of communication to man for 350 years. And as soon as I read this, I thought, I wonder how the governing body will apply this. But, folks, this one paragraph, as I've been prone to pointing out in recent weeks, doesn't really say much about Jehovah himself now, does it? We are told that, how did they say it here? Quote, doubtless. I mean, why would any of us doubt this story of Noah? That's not possible. But they said that, quote, Satan was busy sending mimic prophets to promote lying propaganda of delusions. I mean, at this point, should they really be commenting on things like delusion? But even more interesting in this reference is the power Satan had with his brothers having earth-wide orgies, making giant babies. By the way, time out for a minute. I'm sorry. Bear with me, guys. By the way, am I the only one, seriously, am I the only one on earth that wonders why the Nephilim are always pictured as giant men? I mean, weren't there any giant baby girls? Weren't there any giant Nephilim baby girls? What was going on here? Were they making a clone army? Or just did the Bible just leave out a few details? I mean, I want to see a giant Nephilim girl baby. I haven't seen that pictured one time anywhere in the literature. But apparently the demons were also in complete control of their DNA and chromosomes because, according to the Watchtower, they only made giant boy babies. What are the chances? There is no way the Bible was written by men. I mean, am I the only? No way. This couldn't be a slant by male writers. But with all of that said, what exactly was Satan's delusional message of propaganda that Noah had to deal with and face alone as Jehovah's sole prophet? What was Satan's message? I mean, have you ever thought about this, folks? Didn't Satan, the demons, or the giant boy babies at any point during almost, 100 years overhear Jehovah's prophet Noah telling everyone about this flood thing that was coming? Did they never hear it? Did they not hear the rumors? Did they ever not, again, Satan, demons, and giant boy babies, did they not put two and two together when he was building a giant boat and shoving animals onto it? Why didn't Satan commission the horny demons and boy babies to build their own damn arks so they wouldn't have to drown? Has anyone asked these questions? I mean, the Nephilim got drowned. Why? I mean, the demons didn't overhear Noah, this prophet and preacher of righteousness, and say, hey guys, we need to build some boats. I want to save the giants. Huh. Things that make you contemplate. My guy, Noah. I mean, water is water. The Nephilim couldn't float. Satan knew Jehovah was going to drown his peeps, but he didn't even counterpunch with his own plan. It's all very interesting, folks. But again, for a Jehovah's Witness listening, please, Noah was a very real person. The flood was a very real story. It's history. Yes. My guy Noah was only preaching about it for 120 years, but Satan, the demons, and the boy giants, they just didn't get wind of it, apparently, even while they watched him build an ark. You can even see it in Watchtower pictures where they're laughing at him while he's doing it. And it seems odd, because Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you today that one of the reasons Satan and the demons are, the demons that you can risk bringing home in that purse you bought at the garage sale, are so pissed off, particularly at Jehovah's Witnesses in the last days, because Jehovah drowned their baby boy giants. Remember that one? Remember that, J-Dub urban myth. I know someone remembers that. The demons are especially mad at Jehovah's Witnesses because Jehovah drowned their baby boys. All the while, they had 120 years where Satan, their demon dads, and everybody else could have built their own boats, but apparently didn't see the need. And look, it just gets weirder when Satan still had access to heaven until 1914. It got weirder when you consider that their demon dads are growing penises and impregnating women and populating the earth with boy babies. But for 120 years, they just missed Noah building a boat. I don't know, collecting orangutans, jamming them on there, telling everyone that they were going to be drowned if they didn't get on his boat. They missed the memo. Nonetheless, as this reference told us in Greatest Hit number 2, my guy Noah was not just a boat builder, he was a prophet. Maybe arguably not a great one, because apparently a lot of people didn't think to get on the boat or build their own. This same Watchtower continues in 1955 in paragraph 24, where it says, quote, "But as for Noah, he knew for a certainty that Jehovah was communicating inspired instructions only through him." End quote. What? He did? How so? The questions everyone must have. Back to the Watchtower quote, his own wife, his 3 sons, and their wives believed Noah and accepted him as God's sole channel of leadership. How are they going to apply this? They too joined Noah as preachers of righteousness and helped him build the great boat. Noah, therefore, headed this little preaching organization. Time out. What? My guy Noah. He had the first preaching organization. That's in print, folks. It was Noah. Yeah. I wonder if he knew. Back to the Watchtower. It was Noah, therefore, who headed this little preaching organization as the chief agent and official prophetic channel on earth who had dealings directly with God in heaven. Some of God's divine pronouncements conveyed through the prophet Noah are preserved for us to this day in the Bible as part of religious truth. End quote. Wow. Greatest hit number 2. Of course, he was being completely and directly communicated with by Jehovah, right? I just can't get over this. You're one of Noah's sons, or maybe you're Mrs. Noah, right? We got demons turning into men. No word yet into why the demons didn't just materialize as women. If they thought women were so hot, why not just materialize as a woman and just start pumping out giant babies themselves? Nope, they wanted to be men, and they wanted to have sex with human females. Further proof that the Bible, under inspiration, is most definitely not written by a bunch of men. Men would never want to do that, right? I don't know. Maybe there was something to Adam's rib story after all. They were short on ribs, so they showed up as men. I don't know. Remember, the flood story's real. That's the key. But the family head claims he is hearing voices from heaven telling him to build a boat. If you're wondering if the sons looked at each other and looked at him and said, hey, Dad, hey, Pops, what exactly is a boat? What's an ark? Yeah. And then he walked the earth collecting animals. How, when, where? I've seen those lions. I don't think I want to mess with them. And you just need to trust Dad because he's Jehovah's prophet, as the Watchtower paragraph tells us. In fact, to reiterate, it said, quote, they too joined Noah as preachers of righteousness and helped him build the great boat. Noah, therefore, headed this little preaching organization as the chief agent and official prophetic channel on earth who had dealings directly with God in heaven. End quote. How Noah did this without a watchtower or an awake or a book cart or even a Bible is still unknown. But he was the first preaching organization, according to the faithful slave. It's true, okay? Evidently. The faithful slave of Jehovah's Witnesses say it's true, so it must be true. And we all know what that means. Oh, yes. Even the governing body in 2026 owe their current status as the only prophetic channel on earth. Would you look at that? To my guy Noah. Is anyone surprised? Is anyone surprised they're fond of my guy, my co-host? Shame on you if you don't believe that the biblical story of Noah is a true, concrete, factual, historical event. The proof is right there in print. Just don't look too closely and don't ask questions. And well, it makes this reference to my guy Noah in the Watchtower, and it is an all-time greatest hit on the Surviving Paradise podcast. But wait, I'm going to throw in an extra, just like I did with the martial arts. Are you ready for more from the faithful and discreet slave? From the Watchtower of February 6th, 1975, you'll recognize that year. That was just months before the world was going to end. Evidently. But, Jesus changed his mind. Again, we're told something critical. February 6, 1975, in an article that was sure to answer some very pressing questions. It's titled, Is It Wise to Marry a Near Relative? Wait, what? Yeah, your cousin's pretty cute and you've been eyeballing him for a few years. Should I stop doing this? Leave it to the Watchtower of 1975 to answer it. And who do they use to prove the point? Wow. Quote, but again, after the flood, while men still lived to a great age, Noah's grandsons, in carrying forward the repopulation of the earth, undoubtedly married their cousins. In this present time of promiscuousness and degraded sex practices, approaching or exceeding the debasement of the inhabitants of ancient Canaan, Christians should watch their course. In view of all these points, a Christian should be especially careful to avoid letting amorous feelings or passion be directed toward one close of kin. Perhaps someone, before coming to a knowledge of the truth, has entered into a legal marriage with a close relative. If any of the offspring of that union have inherited genetic irregularities, it is a comfort to know that these children will be healed by Jehovah's undeserved kindness during the 1,000-year reign of his son, Jesus Christ. End quote. What? Look, I was there in 1975. What the hell was going on? We had to point back to Noah's grandsons marrying their cousins and saying, well, that wasn't a good idea. No word yet on why the prophet didn't stop this. Nobody knows. But all they do want to tell you is if you're developing, how they say it, amorous feelings towards the next of kin, you need to shut it down, my friend, okay? And even that counsel leads us right back to my guy Noah. Just ignore that his grandsons did that very thing. Jehovah doesn't want people marrying their cousins, as we've come to learn out. But just a reminder, I know I am all over the board. This is probably driving people nuts this week. But just a reminder that he watched on, that Jehovah is the he, as his angelic sons grew penises and had sex with an imperfect lower life form known as human females. Then, because they did that, he drowned everyone, including babies. It's all very puzzling for a thinking person. But again, Jehovah's Witnesses are never encouraged to think anyway. Just consume and obey. Stay away from your cousin. Noah was a prophet, and there it is. And again, many people that are going to be resurrected from this time, including my guy Noah, are going to feel so gypped in life. I can't get away from it, folks. When they learn that they've been resurrected unto a paradise earth where they will live forever, single and celibate. And I can't help but wonder what Noah's thinking about the 500 years he wasted when Mrs. Noah wanted him so bad. He can't get her back. Her, as well as Noah, will just be ships in the night passing in paradise, remembering the time they could get busy and no longer can because they're resurrected. Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses. The doctrines are too much fun. Okay. I need a nap. All right. Let's include one more greatest hit this week. All right. Greatest hit number 3 comes to us from one of my favorite forms of frozen Holy Spirit, the Golden Age magazine of January 15th, 1936. For those keeping track at home, this next greatest hit was one of Jesus' major concerns for mankind 17 years after he chose Judge Joe and Jehovah's Witnesses to speak for him on earth. I want to apologize now in advance for the delicate nature of greatest hit number 3. I'd like to claim that yes, you can tell I'm not in character this week. I'm being incredibly juvenile. Maybe I'm juvenile every week. But again, this greatest hit was a message from the faithful and discreet slave, put to print and taken to people's door out in the ministry. It is therefore very, Very important messaging. Hold on tight. The golden age of January 15th, 1936, where we were told, quote, the very first act of a healthy animal in the morning is that of elimination. Knowing this, it is the duty, and that's D-U-T-Y, duty of men to train himself accordingly, even though it becomes necessary at the beginning to rise a half hour earlier than he could wish. Every organ of the body must be exercised. Walking is splendid exercise. A suitable way to obtain it is by carrying the message of God's kingdom in printed form from door to door. If elimination is perfect, there is no danger from drafts. I'm really sorry. Quote, such a person may occupy a corner room with all the windows in the room up from the bottom and down from the top, and the wind whistling through the room all night without any danger whatever of his catching cold. Air is necessary to life. End quote. The golden age. The faithful and discreet slave, Jesus Christ himself, 17 years into his reign with Jehovah's Witnesses, he's very concerned about a couple of health issues for his people. For anyone that is confused by what I just read, this wise counsel, it is in fact encouraging Jehovah's people to make sure that, like the animals, they schedule time each morning to take a healthy shit. Yeah, that's it. Elimination. They chose a little nicer word, I guess. And of course, wedged in between the pooping advice, see what I did there, is the important message to preach. It's a great way to exercise, but yeah, Jehovah's people need to be taking dumps each morning. If you didn't catch it, we were instructed to do it, even if it means giving up some sleep. You heard them, by getting out of bed a half an hour early. For the fellas who take their phone or a good magazine into the boys' room to, do a little something, 30 minutes, is that going to be enough time for you? You may be tired, but duty calls, and by duty, I don't mean duty, as in D-O-O-D-Y. If a faithful person were to ignore this wise counsel from the throne of Christ, it could lead to very serious problems, otherwise known today as crowning, prairie dogging, or maybe just a plain accident in your pants. And we don't want that. Jehovah is holy. We must be holy. No word yet, at least I haven't found it, on how Jesus feels about diarrhea, but give me time. I'm going to find that reference too. If you're a Jehovah's Witness who believes this organization is led by Jesus of the Gospels and his all-powerful Holy Spirit, he was concerned about this in 1936. And when I first read it, it gave me anxiety. I mean, you can't just drop this on me without more details. I'm setting my alarm clock to get up 30 minutes earlier to take a Jesus-sanctioned shit, but I need more direction. Can you tell me a little more? Faithful slave, should I wipe front to back? Should I wipe at all? Can we get a demonstration on the service meeting showing how to share this information at someone's door? Should I be using 1-ply or 2-ply toilet paper? Folks, you have to appreciate that Jesus continues to set the example even when it takes pooping 30 minutes earlier in the morning as a reference. I mean, did you catch it? But he wasn't done. He continues in this reference, and therefore making it a greatest hit, to display the golden rule. You might be thinking, I didn't hear him say to love Jehovah with your whole heart, whole soul, or mind. I didn't hear him say you should love your neighbor. Well, you weren't paying attention. We should always love our neighbor as ourselves. But, wow, this is so good. Did you catch it? He encouraged us, even if we had a corner room where we were doing this, to open a window. And he said not to just crack a window, but how did he put it here in the golden age? He said, if the illumination is perfect, you would raise the windows top to bottom. By the way, can I see a show of hands of how many of us out there are taking, I don't know, the perfect shit every day? If the illumination is perfect, what qualifies as perfect? I just don't even get this. Wow. But the windows had to be wide open. And you're showing love for your neighbor. At least that's how I read it, by letting them know that, I'm going to open the windows. I'm going to get up 30 minutes early, and I'm going to spare you, apparently, he talked about the draft, the lovely smell of your all personal dump by having those windows open. I 1936. Behold the wisdom of the faithful and discreet slave of Jehovah's Witnesses. All right. Get up early, folks. Take a dump. Make sure the window is open. Got it. Some very wise counsel. And at this, I got to pull the plug on myself. But even more funny, actually, is that they refer to us or liken us to animals who need to take regular dumps. And I couldn't help. There were so many things wrong with those 3 paragraphs from the Golden Age. I mean, what? I'm prepared for this. I got some toilet paper and stuff. But wait a minute. Now we're animals? Since when are we being compared to the animals? I immediately thought, I've never seen them refer to us or compare us to animals. So I immediately went to the Watchtower Library, where I found in the Insight Book, Volume 1, page 110, a very troubling sentence, the very first sentence under animals, quote, living souls that are not human, end quote. Well, okay. In the first sentence, we're not animals, but we should take a dump like them and get up 30 minutes to do. Okay. Just another example of Jesus' apparent confusion or forgetfulness, even after he created animals and humans. But the faithful slave says we should be like them and take dumps 30 minutes early in the morning. I just don't know. Okay. My friends, with that, I'm out. Not one of my more polished shares on surviving paradise, but frankly, I am absolutely exhausted. There is only so much heavenly wisdom I can take in one day. So I'd like to thank you for sticking around for the latest installment of the Jehovah's Witness Greatest Hits Grab Bag Volume 5. I hope you learned something from the faithful and discreet slave. It was very discreet, that you can take away from this episode in your life and apply immediately. In conclusion, and in honor of all 3 hits aforementioned, a little advice as we part. If you're going to disobey the governing body, the modern day prophet in the mold of my guy Noah, and go out there and get involved in the martial arts, you won't be able to be an elder, which I know hurts. So I'll just say this. If you're going to learn karate, please be sure to take a dump in the morning before you go. And for the love of God, do your laundry on a regular basis. No one wants to see the remnants of your morning elimination in the form of skid marks on your already sinful karate uniform. Anything looking like a brown belt should be on your waist, people, not up your crack. You don't want to be a weak Jehovah's Witness. Somebody put me out of my misery this week. Thanks for putting up with me wherever you may be. Set those alarms 30 minutes early and be well.